Okay, it's 9. All right. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for this very impromptu special planning meeting. I'm actually delighted that we've managed to have almost everybody here this morning. So I'm going to call this to order at 9 o'clock, 9 a.m. And I believe we understand now that the tornado in Barrie had a lot to do with our issues here with the internet yesterday. Thankfully, no one was killed in Barrie. That is quite a tornado. Anyway, so we're going to carry on. Today, and the purpose of today's special meeting is to complete the matters of business that were not conducted during the July 15th, 2021 regular planning committee meeting, which was adjourned due to a loss of quorum resulting from the loss of internet connectivity from poor weather conditions. So I am verbally going to confirm quorum. Councillor Jaglowitz does send his regrets, and I understand that Councillor Hayes does need to leave at 10 o'clock. So I'll just acknowledge that. I'll acknowledge that now. We have the CAO, we have our Director of DSES, and other members of staff are present. Input to the agenda was invited at planning@muskokalakes.ca. I know we got a submission in this morning. I haven't had a chance to look at it. It came in and it was circulated by our clerk, and it is from, I believe, the Winfield. My apologies, Winfield. So I am acknowledging that. And today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. So there is no supplementary agenda today. I'm going to ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interests, which I assume, seeing as the agenda hasn't changed, there wouldn't be any. Okay. Then we are going to carry on from where we left off yesterday, and I believe that can we bring in Miss Eplett and if Mr. Oatley's here, and I don't know if Mr. Smith was able to. No, pretty tough when you're running a full-time business. So there's Miss Eplett. Welcome, and Mr. Oatley, welcome. Okay, and I believe where we were at this point in time when everything shut down on our end, Mayor Harding wanted to make some comments. So Mayor Harding, please take it away.
Thank you very much, and thanks to both Roger and Susan for joining us back here again today, and those people who are tuning in. Just to refresh, we're back on the topic of bylaw enforcement and people who are devastating many of our properties. And to both of you, thank you for your submissions. I couldn't agree with you more that it's a mandate of this council to continue to enforce our bylaws and to do a better job and be better stewards of the environment overall. So I think that's a fundamental to going on. The one thing that I would ask, and it's going to be a question to staff, and I know we're probably not going to have the answer right now, but I do realize that we have roughly over 1,000 building permits that this township issues annually. We're on target for over 400 planning applications that we will be dealing with this year. And I want to try and get a handle on exactly how big the problem is. There's no question the properties that have been mentioned and where charges have been laid this spring are certainly extremely egregious, and I realize that. But I really want to get a handle on how big a problem. Do we need to hire 4 more bylaw enforcement officers to make sure that we can make sure we bring people into conformity? The other thing that was an interesting comment, and thinking a lot, I've had a couple of conversations with some islanders. Last night, I actually drove by in the middle of the rain storm, Sugarloaf Island again, and a number of other islands out on the southern end of Lake Joe, just to take, again, a further look, though I've been by several times. The one thing that I want to challenge planning staff with, I think, as we move forward, maybe we really need to take island properties in particular and treat them differently. from a site alteration bylaw where we talk about the front 200 feet of regular property. Maybe on islands that needs to move to 400 feet. The reality is the middle of the island, that water is still going into the lake. It has no other place to go. It can never get caught in a storm sewer. It can never get caught to be managed and treated. You know, my own personal property, it could potentially be 2 kilometers till that water actually hits a tributary somewhere along the line. So we may, from an enhanced policy, I know we talk about bigger lots on island properties. And I think our planning staff, as we do look at our OP, we might want to consider enhanced policies specifically related to island properties. And I think that may also solve many of our problems. And the other thing that I know you've all spoken about, and I know Councillor Kelly spoke about it as well, and that is the revoking of other permits that are existing. You know, we've heard from our planning staff and our development staff that right now we're not allowed to, what you did wrong over here, we can't affect over here. However, I think the one thing that we could seriously consider, and I'd love, and this is sort of a question that our planning staff consider, as we do enter into site plan agreements, that's a voluntary agreement with the owners of the property. And we could potentially insert a clause that if they are to violate the site plan agreement, that all open building permits would cease and be paused. So I think that might be another way to attack this versus our legal, if we put that in that agreement between the two of us. So I really want to look to that to figure out where we're going. The final thing, and I know Chair Bridgman brought this up, but it really does strike me, a lot of this becomes an education issue to what we can and can't do. I don't think many people understand that they can't cut down a tree on their property, or it has to be under 3 inches, so on and so forth. There's contractors who are still question that or wonder what they can or can't do, and they take the advice of the property owner as to what to do. So that education piece does strike me, and I realize that, again, the MLA and Friends of Muskoka have consistently pushed our council to enforce these bylaws, and Chair Bridgman brought this up. But Susan, I'm going to look directly at you again as part of FOM and MLA, and I'm going to suggest that one of your greatest roles could be that of education, could be that of pushing your members who are significant to educating them on the rules and regulations of what can or can't be done on properties. Because I can pretty much guarantee you, when we've seen violations within our bylaws that we all want to talk about, many of them will be MLA members. Some of them might even be Friends of Muskoka members. And I think we need to really utilize those channels. So again, I, as I think Chair Bridgman did, I'd like to invite you guys to be our partners in that education, and, you know, not just push it on the municipality to enforce it, whatever. Maybe their membership is revoked when somebody does that within your organization. Let's talk about that, and let's really utilize the communication channels we have, because it truly comes down to an education. The one thing that I do appreciate, and Director Pink and our communications specialist, Mr. Moore, we are going to do a far better job. You saw the press release about some recent charges, and we are going to be doing more and more of those to educate the public, which will also solve many of these problems. We all know there's a speed limit on a road of 100 kilometers an hour. Pretty much on a monthly basis, we see someone whose car has been impounded at 200 kilometers an hour or doing something ridiculous. We can't necessarily stop everything, but we can talk about bad behavior. Drunk driving is still a thing. Everyone knows not to do it. But again, on a weekly basis in Ontario, someone's charged with impaired driving. So let's just continue to do that campaign. Like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, I think, is an excellent opportunity and a showcase as to how we categorize those people who break those laws. And I think we together combined can do a better job of shaming those people who are not good stewards of Muskoka. I think that sort of does it. The one other thing that I really want to challenge again, our planning staff, and again, is we look at these enhanced island properties and what more we can do with that. So it's more just a comment and to let you both know that everyone's voice is heard. And again, I heard it last evening at a function from many, many islanders, but they do appreciate that our staff are on it. And I will also publicly like to thank our staff and our new bylaw enforcement for doing a great job. About 2 months ago, I received a call on the weekend that people were doing work on a property. Our bylaw enforcement wasn't there, but at 10 a.m., our Director of Environmental Services and Sustainability, Mr. Pink, he showed up with me on that property and we stopped work because they were damaging the waterfront. So those are the kinds of things that I just want to thank our staff. And I think this whole council, because we have truly upped the game in bylaw enforcement. I think Mr. Pink said in his 8 or 10 years, he's seen a couple of charges. We've had 4 this spring. So I think the public needs to get the message, and I think I put it in my newsletter, that staff are on this, and we're going to continue to do a better job with enhancements and refinements. And let's collectively come up with some creative solutions. I will say, I think from a licensing perspective, it's nice to say about licensing contractors. I know this much. If anyone's tried to have any work done in Muskoka, you can't get a contractor currently. And if we're going to limit things with licensing, it might even become more problematic or promote more illegal building because I can't get a licensed contractor. So I really think we need to involve the Home Builders Association on this particular one and get their advice how we would implement some of those kinds of rules. And maybe the licensed are only official licensed blast contractors, because it's the blasting and tree removal and site alteration that really become egregious, not so much the guy swinging a hammer framing something. So let's involve the home builders. Let's get their advice how we implement something along these lines without limiting, because again, our construction is our #1 industry. Circle back to my first comment, how many of our 1,000 building permits are offside? And that's what we really need to understand, so we can, and where are the offside people so that we can move forward with this. But again, I think everyone on this Zoom call and our entire council will be committed to doing a significantly better job going forward and protecting more of the environment. So I'll just leave my comments there. Staff have some work and some ideas to bring us back with some percentages of violations and some workarounds potentially through site plan to potentially limit other building permits. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Director Pink, I know there's lots there. Would you like to say anything? Okay.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for those comments, Your Worship, and through the chair. Just a couple quick points. I certainly can't, off the top of my head, sort of give you any firm stats as to how big of a problem is it out there, but I know in some of the delegations, it gives the impression as if the entire township's waterfront is under attack. And as you noted, we issue well over 1,000 building permits a year. Well on track, almost 100 site plans already this year. And yes, there has been a few bad examples, and we've issued a press release about pressing charges against those individuals. But I still like to think that the vast majority of our development and ratepayers do comply with their zoning bylaws. Certainly there's the odd infraction, relatively minor here and there, but we've had a few bad examples this year, and we're working to address those. With respect to island properties, I would agree with you. I think they are certainly different. They do pose challenges, and we do need to look at that. I think all I would add is that our current OP already does look at them somewhat differently. As we all know, you can create lots of 200 feet and an acre along our waterfront. Islands have for many years been a minimum of 300 feet and 2 acres, and we're looking to further restrict those. What some members may find somewhat surprising, and certainly we can go further, is actually our site plan control bylaw. You've probably heard me say for many years is in dire need of updating. Currently, islands are actually not subject to site plan control. Lake Joe happens to be because of the lake in its entirety. but islands actually don't have to go through the site plan control process outside of those certain identified lakes. Yet waterfront backlots do that are not on the water. So there's some certainly updating that's needed of our site plan control bylaw to look at that. And I know our bylaw enforcement staff, our planning staff, and myself have ideas about updating the site alteration and tree preservation bylaw. The 200-foot rule likely does need to be looked at, as well as some other updates to that. With respect to some of the requests that your worship has made, as well as the delegations yesterday, staff certainly happy to look into getting a building opinion, or a legal opinion, but I can likely save some taxpayer funds. I can assure you that we're not able to refuse the issuance of a building permit if it complies fully with all applicable law. And the site alteration bylaw and the tree preservation bylaw are not applicable law under the Ontario Building Code. As well, if an owner contravenes a tree preservation bylaw, we are not able to revoke their building permit or issue a stop work order on a building permit unless they've contravened the building permit itself. And Mr. Snyder, our chief building official, reiterated that yesterday. But again, certainly happy to get that written by a lawyer if council wishes. With respect to the site plan, I'm certainly open to looking at ideas to how to get creative and ensure greater compliance. But the one thing that committee certainly needs to note is the Planning Act, and I think I say this every orientation I do with a new council, you are simply a creature of the province. We are bound by their regulations. The Planning Act is very clear as to what you can include in a site plan, and obligating someone to revoke their building permit if they contravene the site plan is not an option. That would be a clear portion of an agreement that would have no authority to impose on someone. Now, an owner could willingly agree to that, and that's fine. It would not be binding on future owners, though. So again, we wouldn't be able to force it on a staff level. An owner could simply say no, and if the property changed hands, it would not be applicable. On your last point, I certainly couldn't agree more. I think I mentioned that in my remarks yesterday. I think staff, bylaw enforcement staff, are doing an excellent job of investigating infractions, following up. I know planning staff are doing an excellent job of entering into excellent site plans and educating the public. But I think what we can use some assistance with, and certainly our economic development and communications coordinator, certainly doing a great job, but he's quite a busy individual. We can certainly use all the ears and eyes on the ground that the MLA and the Friends have to spread the word and try to change that culture in our community, where it's no longer socially acceptable to blast and remove trees and clear shorelines in contraventions of our bylaws. If we can work on changing that culture, and I think the steps council's already taken this year through the budget and our bylaw resources, we're already starting to move in that direction, but it will take time. With the assistance of the Friends of Muskoka and the MLA and other groups, we can certainly speed up that process to educate the public. And I think in the long run, we will be on good footing. So I hope that responds to some of your points and assists the discussion.
Thank you, Director Pink. Lauren, I see we have two people waiting. Could we bring them in, please? As we called this special meeting, it is open to the public again. And I know, I believe that Ms. Hicks was waiting yesterday, and I'm going to guess the other telephone number may be the Winfields. So I am going to, before we go farther in our discussion, I think it's fair that we hear from them, which is their ability to have 2 minutes to voice their opinions on this. So I'm just going to pause for a minute while we bring them in. There's Miss Hicks. Welcome, Miss Hicks.
Thank you. I'm not sure if my husband is on the line. We're just we're separated right now. I mean,
it starts with 7056. That's the only information I have on his telephone number.
So no, that's not. Is
okay?
That
so that's someone else. So I guess you're going to carry the ball for him, and you have your 2 minutes. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to read a letter. I'm sorry I was late in joining. May I read the letter then?
As long as you're within 2 minutes.
Okay.
If not,
okay.
Please summarize, please.
Yes. So this is from John Winfield, whose family is cottaged. I am married to John. cottage on the island now since the 1880s. So I'll read in his voice. My family has been guardians of Sugarloaf Island for its entire cottaging history, cottaging continuously for 140 years since two couples began tenting in the 1880s. I wasn't expecting, I'm sorry to do this for him. Coming up each season by steamboat from Gravenhurst on the same boat that eventually brought cottagers ice blocks, and later taking the train to McTier and walking the distance through bush and over hill and dale in their suitcases and ankle-length skirts and lace-up boots. One of the two men was my great-great-grandfather, who built a simple cottage building in 1882 that stood until 1 year ago, not far from the boathouse that was built during the First World War. All of the docks and structures built by the family right up until present day. Some of you may have known the old green boathouse with a jump-off balcony, a well-known landmark on the lake. With the sale of the larger part of the family-owned property 1 year ago, all of that changed. In one season, with the sale of my family's property and concurrently that of our neighbor, the island was desecrated, leveled, obliterated. We're not formally part of this petition process and only learned of it by chance when it hit the Barrie 6 o'clock news. Neighbors and friends reached out to share the news, shocked as we were that the family cottage had such newfound infamy. These friends and family live far and wide through the region as well as Ontario and beyond, and have lent their voice too, dismayed at what has become of Sugarloaf, knowing how much it meant to so many generations. The rock face has not only been blasted, but mined to create what appears like a two-lane highway across the top of what is Lake Joseph's highest point on the lake. It is gut-wrenching and heartbreaking. To my family, whose matriarch, a woman who never married and had no children of her own, yet managed through the Depression. So sorry.
Sorry about that. Miss Hicks, I know you're reading directly what all of the councillors got here.
Okay, great.
Could you maybe summarize? And we will all, I promise you, this council reads everything that they get.
Okay, will do.
But if you could summarize, it is devastating. I understand. So, and we'll get the history and stuff. So please carry on.
Thank you. I think the key that he hopes to portray is that there are many cottagers, there are many people. Didn't expect to do this.
It's okay. Just take your time. Take a few deep breaths. You can center yourself again. We're here. We're listening.
All right. That there are many people in Muskoka, many and of very different wealth and means. And I think that we just want to be very careful to make it a place that all can enjoy. And it is I'll speak for my husband. He would say that he knows the landscape. You can't even find the landmarks anymore. It's all gone. The boundaries to the properties, everything has been leveled. I think we're very realistic that development happens, but there should be responsible development, and it shouldn't be to the point of intimidation of others. There is a property, a piece of it that remains in the family that is really, it's below this clear cutting, and when the septic for this tiny little place, which really is like a tool shed compared to what things are being built. But Colson Brothers said, just don't build above this thing. And it's been clear cut, the property above it, right to the edge, not a scrap, not a shred of green. And we understood that you can't even build a structure within 30 feet of the boundary, but it does appear you can blast and level right to the edge of the property. So that's one of the questions we have. The fact that there aren't even the markers and the blazes aren't even there anymore. Where is the property line? They've gone over it. Those are things we wonder about. But just that fact that there are so many people who treasure the land, who value it, and that money shouldn't intimidate those who do have. I'm so sorry. Have demonstrated a commitment to safe use.
No, I mean, I think what you're seeing is that's why we're all here, because the the devastation is just beyond anybody's imagination on this piece of property. But as Director Pink, when we first started, kept reminding us, you can't control bad behavior. So Ms. Hicks, nobody wants to see this, but there are people who are going to disregard and do this. And that's where we're trying to figure that out. But I understand it must be devastating on a family property to see what you've had in your family that long and what has occurred. So I think I'd like to just say to you, we're all on the same team here to stop this and not have it happen again. So I'm going to thank you.
May I just say, I'm so sorry about the last point. I do think it's important. It's a comment that we shared with the mayor yesterday. And that is, I think the council does have widespread support. The majority of the people enjoying Muskoka are caring, careful guardians of the land and the region. I think that I would think if I were on council, there would be a feeling that there's a lot of money and there's a lot of power. But do please know that the reach of the impact of this beautiful region spreads far beyond the boundary of Muskoka, through the province, through the country, you know, and that these people, many of them cottage owners in the region, do support the council's work. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry. You know, that tells you how deeply you care. So that's the only message that we're getting here. So thank you, Ms. Hicks, for your input, and certainly you're right. Your council's completely on side here and on it. So thank you. All right. So now we have. Do we know if? All right. What about Miss Flynn? I assume. Miss Flynn, are you there? Miss Fly. Sorry, it's Jenny Fly. I just got my eyes in order here. Would you like to speak, Miss Fly? All right. Maybe not. So what I'm going to do then, Miss Fly, can I get you just to turn on your video for a minute? All right, I'm going to assume that she has phoned in, but just listening, or on to just listen. So I'm going to go back now to our committee, and Councillor Edwards, I believe that you were the next one up.
Thank you very much. I support what the mayor was saying about islands going 400 feet. I would even go one step forward and make it the whole island. And that because that way, you know, we are protecting. Once they're all blown apart, then you'll never put them back. So, and it stops the fun. Education is a good thing. But we should also be educating the real estate people and the contractors. And I wouldn't be opposed to licensing. I think, and I've mentioned this years ago, we should be going after the contractors. The local contractors know you can't blow a whole island up. So that, you know, it should be that way. And Councillor Kelly yesterday said a good thing, but the ex-mayor or the past mayor of Sigmund, I think, said it best: if you don't like our rules, don't come. And that maybe should be what we should be looking at. And I know it's onerous, but I think we should be going, especially site plan control on all islands and that. And I think that's it for now, but thank you very much for your time, and we are listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, I guess a couple of things. First of all, I think there's no question we all share the same emotion on this piece. I do believe that with the work being done currently with the committees, et cetera, and the council, at the OP and the OPA. You know, I do believe we've got this going forward, and I think it lands squarely on all of our shoulders. I do want to take a moment, though. I believe the word in my mind is presence. The township has established a new and enhanced, energized, if you will, presence as it relates to bylaw, and we all know what that's created, what that messaging is out there. I wouldn't be asking the MLA and the Friends of Muskoka and all the cottager associations to do our work. The Township of Muskoka Lakes as a corporation needs to stand up, needs to send a message to everyone, and then those other people, those ancillary support groups, can do just that. I mean, education is on us. I firmly believe that we start this thing. We press that go button, and people will listen. This shouldn't be word of mouth on the street. The days of self-policing in Muskoka have to stop. It's not working. People are transgressing. They're doing things that are not allowed, and they're continuing to do it. Here's a woman crying in front of us because something that she's known for her whole life and her family's life has been destroyed, and it has been destroyed. And I mean, that message is loud and clear. I would like to see this council, both this term and certainly as we all run next year, this has to be an election issue. That in itself will amplify this voice. We need to be stronger. I don't want to go and have a meeting with the real estate association and say, hey, listen, we really need your help. We don't need their help. They can communicate the message once we set the parameters for that message. And so that's really where I want to stand on this one is let's keep it in this house. Let's get this house in order. And let's move on. Thank you.
Councillor Zabit, just as an aside, I know with the islands and the garbage bins, I can't tell you how many islanders told me they had no idea because they don't tune into our social media. They don't see this stuff. So all we're asking is help in getting it to that common person on the street, because there's many people in our area who don't follow our social media, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to let you know that. I'm not sure if I misunderstood part of what you were saying.
Yeah, no one understands it better than I, because I get those same calls. Thank you. And as a supplemental piece to this, the reason people don't know is because we don't tell them. I'm not gonna lay blame and why people aren't whispering to each other in the grocery store. The Township of Muskoka Lakes, we need to. Corey's doing a great job. I believe we're doing a credible job. What I'm saying as a communications person is we need to do a better job. We need to yell it from the rooftops, from the buildings, from wherever. It is on us to pass on information. I do believe that. I may be one of 10 that believes that, but I don't think we do. I don't want to say I don't want to be critical. We could do a much better job. And then once we do that communications job, then it's so easy for the straight, super strong message to get through to all of those associations and cottager groups. But I don't think, I'm not seeing information dissemination, if you will, in any sort of fulsome manner. I don't think the mayor's videos cut it anymore. I don't think the way we pass information gets out there. We need a communications plan that works way up there, nice, big and square. We may need some more bylaw. Presence is that word. Let's get back to that. Presence. We need a presence as a township, as an entity, as a force to show people what they can and can't do, not relying on other people and word of mouth. Those days, I hope, are gone. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm still not clear. The idea was we do that, Councillor Zavitz, but we ask partners to help us push that out, not create it, but actually just push it out. So that's so you and I may not agree completely on that one. Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, and through you, we had talked some time ago about creating a Welcome to Muskoka Lakes package, which would include a code of conduct and let people know that what they do does affect their neighbors. It could also include a thinking of building, here are the rules, and a thinking of renovating, here are the rules, and thinking of putting out your property as short-term rental, here are the rules. And for those that ignore or disregard or bend the rules, there are repercussions. And I think that this should, once this package is completed, it could go to real estate, it could go to builders, it could go to our partners. But I think we have to put a priority on creating that particular package and getting it out there. And I would ask that this priority be set and we start moving.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, and really 2 points. First, I want to make sure that nothing I said yesterday in any way undermines the really good work that I think David Pink and his staff in the building inspection, the bylaw enforcement, I think they're doing a really good job. I just don't think we've given them the tools that they really need to do the complete job. And second point, I think we are vastly underestimating the scale and the size and the frequency of the kinds of issues that we're being asked to fix. I don't think this is an education issue. I think if it was an education issue, there'd be far more blasting going on in the summer. The blasting tends to happen in here in the middle of the winter when nobody can hear it or see it. And I don't think that that's just somebody trying to be friendly to the neighbors. That's somebody trying to do something that they know they don't want to get stopped until it's done. I don't think that there's any material consequence to breaching the bylaws and breaching the protocol of doing work on property up here. I honestly believe at the scale of some of these developments, sizable fines, wind up costing less than the soffit and fascia on the boathouse. And that's just factored into the expense. We're being made fools of, in all honesty. I think we are. I really don't think it's that this is the time for us to go all incremental. Well, we'll just sharpen that stick and we'll fix that twig and we'll fill that hole. We need to be leaders. We need to stand up, stand tall, take this place back, and stop the kinds of behavior. And I don't just think it's new bylaws and more enforcement officers. It's putting real consequence. It's making the consequences of a breach really consequential. There's no consequence to having, being told you can't do something that you've already done. That doesn't mean anything. We need to make the consequence of a breach, of egregious behavior, of people who go and destroy this stuff, of people who make someone like Ms. Hicks cry. And through her, me sitting here half a mile away from Sugarloaf, that impacts me. I love this place. We all love this place. We wouldn't do this job if we didn't. But we can't solve this thing by holding hands and hoping. We've got to stand up and take charge of it. And I think that means we need to take a hard look. I respect David's opinion. And from what I heard yesterday, we probably can't close open building permits. But there's nothing to say that we can't sign an agreement with each developer before he breaks ground saying, you screw up here and you agree in advance. Your people go home and stay home for 6 months. Licensing contractors, I understand there's a lot of hair on that. I understand that makes them more expensive and probably difficult to access. But at the end of the day, isn't this really worth it? I actually don't think focusing on islands is enough. Where I'm sitting right now, can see the evidence of blasting on a drive to the back door mainland that cost enough rock to build a doubles tennis court. That's just in one direction. In the other direction, there's more of it. So I think we just need to, and I proposed yesterday, and as I said yesterday as well, there's a way to fix this. I don't think it's by sharpening the sticks we're already using. I think we need to go away and come up with better approaches and better ideas, broad sweeping change. We need to be loud and proud with it. And we need to make sure that everybody understands that you come here, there are rules, you abide by that rules, or you're not welcome. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm just going to put my contractor's hat on now. It's interesting, the conversation so far. I have for almost 20 years been requesting our council be involved in having licensing of contractors. I will tell you that when I have worked in other municipalities, and the owner, in fact, had to sign off because we were not licensed in that area. City of Toronto, you have to have a license to go and work in that municipality or city. The idea that this is going to be an expense, all of these types of things, I have to be licensed for everything that we do. I work for developers. That's a known thing. You know, most people that know my business, I have primarily 2 large developers that I work with. I will tell you that they are exceptional people, follow the rules every step of the way and take my advice. And in this case, for over 20 years with a couple of them. I watch every day some of the young fellows and some of those young guys that actually worked for me over the years and things like that, carrying on business, went out and bought a backhoe, those types of things, but actually really don't have a good education on what they're doing or their impacts. Many are building without permits. I bring some of those issues forward, and I think I've mentioned this to you on one particular site that we that is being built on right now on Lake Muskoka. Within that neighborhood, there are 6 locations that have been building without permits. Oh, we'll just add a Muskoka room, or we'll just put this here. And it's interesting because a couple of those lots are very, very small. What concerns me is that it's not going to be a hardship for the owners to actually want to. Perhaps they want to hire someone that the municipality has licensed. And that's all they're doing. They're just saying that these people, they have a business license, they pay taxes, or for instance, they have their GST number, all of those things. There are always going to be people that are trying to slide in, oh, can you cut the, often it's like, don't pay taxes, that's been historically, the first ask. But I would say, much like others have said, the majority of people want to do the right thing. The majority of people look to guidance from those contractors that they're looking for. And honestly, in my experience, we have very good qualified contractors. They're willing to give good information often. And I get those phone calls like other counselors, I'm sure. They're even calling us. Do you see where this fits in? Is this approved? Do you think? And I recognize we have a bit of an issue with reaching out to staff to get quicker responses in some cases because of COVID. But in the past, and I know I've been very, very pleased with the building department, and maybe and I would say that the relationship is not from being a counselor perspective, but I could pick up the phone and call, for instance, Sandy Boss, and he will look into something very quickly for me and get those answers back. That also happens with dealing with other, well, Neil Donald wasn't a perfect example, and I haven't had the opportunity to deal with Mr. Schneider yet, but that is always available. And I think that we should just, perhaps, I really want us to do that licensing piece. I think that it brings us to a level of expecting a professionalism in the construction industry in this area. I don't think that you're going to have the homeowners BOC, excuse me, Homeowners Association, I should have said that, BOC. But the education piece, and again, I'll put my realtor hat on. Realtors, certainly good realtors, know exactly what they're selling. Absolutely everything that they're selling. We have a lot of part-timers. They may only sell 1 or 2 properties a year. That's another issue with the real estate industry. But the fact is that realtors know what they're doing. If you're going to get a good qualified realtor, they know what they're doing. Often we see them on our calls. So I don't know that we need to reach out and create any new education piece. We have it there. I will say years ago, with a different director of planning, I had brought in many flyers, some of them from City Toronto. They have really, really good educational pieces that they hand out to the public, as well as a few others that I picked up from London. And so there's a lot of good stuff out there that we can pick up on. Not going to be a big deal. And again, it's those handouts. I think we even talked about a checklist at one point that I'm not sure if the MLA I thought was involved, but way back when. But again, I will say we haven't come very far in 20 years. We haven't been innovative in this way. So let's get at it. But I really do, I want to support what Councillor Kelly had said, but the licensing is an important piece in Muskoka Lakes, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Nishikawa. Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, you know, there's really 2 parts. There's one, in my view anyways, right now, there's the strengthening of the policies, making consequences more meaningful, shifting a culture, you know, taking back, and that's all the meat and potatoes, quite frankly. That's the hard stuff. That's the stuff we're trying to figure out here right now. I am kicking myself, I'm not going to lie, because the amount of discussion we have about discussion, I should have really pushed harder at budget time to have that role. Because it's not just here. It's not just what we're talking about today. It permeates through almost every discussion we have. 2 days ago, we were talking about gypsy moths or LDDs, whatever the appropriate term is right now. And that's just one example of many. But what we really are talking about, so I don't want to take away at all from the policies and the consequences, but just because the topic of communication continues to come up, we really need to have an external communication strategy. And that's, I think, what we don't have. That is understanding our audience. We've been touching upon it, but I think Ms. Hicks may have even said a large group of people actually are here. We love it. We actually want to take care of it. But we don't always have the information at our fingertips to understand what that means and how to do it effectively. So let's for a moment just assume that 90% of the people up in Muskoka are here and they want for their future generations, for their kids to be able to jump off the dock safely and have this place, hopefully, for their families to grow up in. But there are people who don't do that. And so that's your understanding your audience and understanding strategies in order to get to these different audiences. The second part is then understanding what the message is. And I think that's what Councillor Zavitz was getting to. What's the content? So it's great for us to say we want to get message out, but if we don't actually fully understand what the message is, we don't have the appropriate content. And we've had so many different examples of this coming up. I mean, we're going to hear about shipping containers today. You know, there should be fact sheets. There should be meaningful, easy to read, understandable content with good sound policies that then can be disseminated out to the larger audience. And then the third thing is really then how you deliver it. And so, you know, we often leap to the immediate solution at the end. We want to get messages out. We need to get to the larger audience. Well, there's so many different ways to deliver the message. There's delivering it through social media. There's delivering it through HURB. There's delivering it through associations, the different key stakeholder groups, you know, but that's just part of a whole external strategy. So, you know, maybe the last sounding comment I'm going to throw out to my peers on this call is this the time where we actually have to contemplate putting some thought or resources behind a communications role to help us, because I can tell you, as somebody who had to step up because of COVID and support, we have half a person in the Township of Muskoka Lakes devoted to communications. That other role is economic development. I can tell you that as myself, as well as a few of my other peers, stepped in to help navigate COVID at a time when the world was having to go through that. We're not experts. I had a background in it, but we stepped in to help and support the community, trying to help get through this really unprecedented time. Well, let's just for a moment imagine that's the case. That may not be the right long-term strategy here. So, just given the amount, I appreciate everybody indulging me, but I would challenge council to say maybe we need to support staff further now to get some further resources in to help in this regard, not just with the delivery, but let's just really understand what we're trying to tackle, who our audience is, get the right message out to the right people at the right time to stop things. And my final comment is, for those that are the 90% of people that are up here in Muskoka, let's make sure we don't, shame them. Let's help people. Let's create unity, not division here, unity. And good messaging can do that. Let's get everybody a part of it and being proud of the fact that they don't cut down that tree. And that takes time. So anyways, thanks for indulging me. I know that sounded like a soapbox, but I really feel very strongly about this. I want to protect, and I don't mean to pick on you, Miss Hicks. But I do want to protect people like that, to say, we are all in this together. So if we're all in this together and we want to do it together, that means we all have to put our hands in together at the same time. So my challenge to council is, maybe we have to stand up today, and maybe we have to actually say financially, we have to put some money behind that communications role after all. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, and I have two topics to speak to, and I will be very, very quick. First one is communication. I can't say it better than what my colleague, Councillor Mazin, did about communications. All big corporations, which we are, have a communications officers and a communication strategy. So I think we should do need to do that. And so I'm not going to say much more on communications, except for I think I really value the quick hit messages from the mayor in his media. They're timely, they're on point. And the other one is in the newsletter, the mayor's newsletter. Everyone gets a hard copy of the newsletter, or not the newsletter, the mayor's message. So, and that should continue and be maybe a little more concise, but yet there's a new sheriff in town. And that came loud and clear on the last media release that we had when we were talking about the fines, the $300,000 in fines. We got to make sure that kind of stuff gets out quick and easy. But I'm very supportive of engaging our partners, such as the MRA, the MLA, our Muskoka, the Friends of Muskoka, many others. They have long lists of email lists, and then they can get a message out quickly. So that's that. So finally, I'm going to go back to sort of wrap this all up. And from what I want to know, we've had 2 or 3 hours of really good conversations and ideas. So what? What are we going to do? What are our next steps? We can go away and pat ourselves on the back that we all had great times to speak. We got heard, but I want to hear action items. What are we going to do? We've got 16 months left, and we've got to make a difference of this term of council. So what are we going to do next? And I'll turn that back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. So I believe what I am hearing here is great support for a licensing system. Can I get a feel for that from council, from committee? All right, so I'm going, and Mayor Harding. So I believe, and it made me think, I have to go back to Councillor Nishikawa's comments, because in the earlier days, you could just walk into the building department, tell them what your issue was, and they were so helpful. We have graduated to a Toronto type municipality now. We're not a rural municipality, and we're servicing municipal, very savvy municipal people. So I think the licensing system has to fit in here just like it does in Toronto. So I'm certainly part of that too. I see, before I carry on, Mayor Harding, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you. And again, I'm not opposed to a licensing system, but I think we need to make sure whatever it is we do, because it will change the process of building within Muskoka Lakes significantly. We must include people like Muskoka Home Builders Association to understand. Remember that every time we put something in place, there is a positive, but there may also be a negative implication, and we need to understand that. This council has had to backtrack a couple bylaws. We've made decisions in past, at times without haste. So I think what the appropriate thing is to have our staff prepare a staff report. Let's start with that, about what a licensing bylaw would look like. And we need to make sure that it's circulated, that we understand those involved. My fear, and I will be happy to state this, it is only going to promote more people not using building permits, not following the rules. I am aware of MLA board members who have built things on their property without permits. So we do need to look within to what we do, because sometimes it becomes too difficult along the way. So let's just walk slowly and understand the ultimate goal is to continue to protect Muskoka and enhance what we're doing. We have, and Councillor Roberts, yes, we have 16 months or whatever it is left. We've also done an incredible job, this council, if we had to stop tomorrow in this term, in setting new standards, new direction, better within the township of Muskoka Lakes. And Muskoka Lakes is better off today than they were a year ago and 2 years ago and 4 years ago. So I think we all need to recognize that change comes with time and energy. And we know how backed up our planning department is right now, because there's far more planning applications. So I just want to make sure we flag that, we make sure we involve the right people in this decision and make sure it's the right decision, understanding all applications to that decision. So again, not opposed, but I just want to walk slowly in doing this.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Yes, I didn't want to give the impression that we should be out there within 12 months doing this, because I understand we need to do our research really, really well. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify the discussion about licensing. I am not saying that you cannot take out a building permit without having a licensed contractor. I'm encouraging that if we have a licensing system, that a contractor voluntarily goes to the municipality and registers and gets basically a license, that they can then turn around to their client and say, I'm recognized from the municipality as being a builder in this community. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not like trying to put in fines or any of those kind of things. But the importance of us stepping in and saying, we recognize these individuals that have decided that being licensed is important to their business. And in fact, it becomes a bit of a marketing campaign for them, quite frankly, much like realtors. Aren't we happy to deal with a realtor as opposed to a flyby, do it your own kind of thing? In most cases, people like to deal with a licensed realtor. I would just suggest that if we had that in place, that people will choose to do that, and the outcome could be better than what we have today. I don't want to see some sort of system, though, that is saying that we're going to hold up building permits because somebody is not licensed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My 2 cents worth, I would like a staff report that goes through all those options. Councillor Mazan?
Thank you, and through you, and you may be able to help me on this question, but I do think it's appropriate for us to determine if committee wants to include some budget resources against communication. We're going to hear some delegations coming up about septic. We're going to be hearing delegations from Climate Action Muskoka. All of these things are interconnected. So, you know, whether it's right now, and maybe the CAO can chime in, but I do think we need to, you know, again, I'm kicking myself that I didn't push more forcefully. We decided to go with our bylaw enforcement, and to those on this call, my bylaw enforcement team has been out there and has made me more busy in the last 3 weeks out in the field, going and looking at things than I probably have in the last 2 years. So anyways, on that note, I'm asking for some guidance on how to push that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Mazan. I know you're saying that was good to enhance our enforcement, but we felt we didn't have the budget at this time to do.
That's right.
So Director Hammond, I think this has been, you're asking for your sort of comments in terms of adding more to our budget at this point in time. What are the possibilities, etc.?
Madam Chair, can everybody hear me? Okay, sorry, I had to switch to a different set of headphones. Couple of thoughts here. I think it depends on the timing. If committee wants to make a recommendation to council to have staff come back with a plan as it relates to what does communications look like in the short term, we could do that. If it's more of a request for an inclusion for a position in the 2022 budget, similar to what we did last year, we can do that as well. So I think I'm looking for a little bit of clarity from committee as to, is the timing more so for next year or immediate? And is it are you looking to establish a position? Are you wanting to create a plan? Because I think we would need to look at, or is it a review of the communications function with what it should look like? Some kind of review that way. Just seeking a bit of clarity there.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Councillor Mazan. I think long term we certainly need to up that area, but Councillor Mazan?
It's a good question, of course, because it's coming from our CAO. I personally think we need to start exploring possibilities for today, knowing that for the next budget, you know, this should be something that we are contemplating. It's not always about adding bodies, it's about adding the right bodies or right positions. So I think logically the next step might be at our next general and finance, perhaps, understanding the function of communications and understanding the need and what that could look like as a possibility today and as the future, so that council actually has something from staff that they could be talking about.
Mr. Hammond?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think what I'd like to do is probably meet with Mr. Moore and Councillor Mazan to sort of frame this, if you will, for a future report to come back to General and Finance, if that's appropriate.
Okay, Councillor Mazan?
Yes, and if I just could ask that Councillor Kelly joins that as well as the Chair of Economic Development, and also he was also on the Communications Committee with me. I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, do we have general consensus with the committee that we go that direction? Oh, Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you, yeah, I'd like to be part of that, but I have to tell you, I'm still not sure what our messaging is. And so for me, it's about identifying a message and then building a team to deliver it, rather than building a team and then trying to figure out what we want them to say. So I just want to be cautious that we don't get the cart before the horse. I don't know what we're going to tell people. If you're thinking about blowing something up, don't. I think they know that. So to me, it's about where are we going? What's our direction? What kind of changes do we need to make? When can we expect that to happen? And then put together whatever team we need, including outsiders, to help us get the message out.
Councillor Mazan?
I agree, and that's why I asked for Councillor Kelly to be on it. I think we need to really understand what we're trying to do here and then create the team and the appropriate team in order to make that happen. But if you go back to the function of communications, it's understanding audience, message and content, and then the delivery of how to make that happen. So thank you.
Okay, so I think we're going to leave that with our CAO and Councillor Mazan, Councillor Kelly, and Mr. Moore, and we'll look for a report back to GNF. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. Just a thing on licensing. You know, you're not supposed to own a dog here without a license. You're not supposed to take a taxi ride without a license. We have hawkers and peddlers licenses, so you don't get a bad hamburger. And yet you can build a $3 or $4 million cottage and you don't need a license. I mean, it's in other municipalities. And you know, it's funny because when I was in business in Georgetown, people were complaining about the plumbing inspector, oh, this and that. I said, I like it because it makes everyone do the proper job like I do. And that, so they can't cut corners. So I don't see a problem with licensing. Either that or we should take the dog licenses, tax licenses and hackers and license and get rid of them too, because this is important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I thought I saw you, Councillor Zavitz, but I think your hand is down again. So, oh, it's up again. Okay.
Well, thank you, and through you, I'm very frustrated because this isn't about communication at all. I mean, I think we'll get to that, and I hope we do get to that. But I don't think it's another committee. What it does need to do is come to the CAO's point. It needs to come to have this discussion we're having now at GNF in a more fulsome manner. You know, who's to say that the bylaws that we have aren't okay for now while we enhance them and improve them in our official plan scrutiny? We are doing that. We're making every effort, I guess, to the mayor's point. You know, every year we check off more boxes. My point is more to some of the other councillors have said, that this is not a communications problem today. I mean, it's certainly part of the solution, but right now we know what the problems are. Let's look at those problems and deal with those problems, and then we can communicate with whatever team we decide what the solutions are and what the going forward is. That's marketing, right? I mean, understand the problem first, and how do we go out and communicate something? Don't cut down a tree. That doesn't make sense. There's reasons why we have the laws and bylaws and things that we do. Otherwise, we've thrown everything out that all those other good people for all these years have done. And I for one, could never support that. So I think it needs a real good look at GNF in the next meeting as it relates to, I suppose, the positioning of our bylaws. How strong are they? Are we good? Do we need more bylaw enforcement? Are they actually in place? We just aren't enforcing them. That has been an issue. We know we're dealing with it now. So perhaps that could be the same thing we look at in terms of effectiveness of the existing bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zavitz. And actually, that probably comes back to planning because it's under all of that. But I agree with you completely. And I believe the mayor had mentioned to Director Pink a number of areas we need to explore. So Director Pink, can we bring something back to planning next month in terms of what we've just been talking about?
Thank you. Through the chair, if I agree, perhaps the communications is a secondary piece. We need to know what we're communicating first. I can completely appreciate that. If the direction or the sense I'm getting, there seems to be a desire to explore a licensing regime for all contractors. That will be a significant project. A lot of thought needs to get put in that. There's a lot of implications, consequences to such a regime that need to be fully explored by staff. And I hate to sort of be this blunt, but I don't really know if staff and the existing resources can tackle yet another significant project like that. I think you're likely looking at some outside assistance to produce a report, set up a regime. I would highly recommend a lot of public input into something like this before we go down that road. I don't think this would be a short endeavor. However, staff can aim to, again, with some outside assistance, perhaps come back with a report outlining a general framework and a further discussion for whether it's planning or I think it would be a planning committee discussion.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Director Pink, I don't think I was clear. I understand that's a long-term license and it's a big project. I think I think perhaps with Councillor Zavas, we're talking about some of the things that the mayor said. Can we find out how many, how many are violating this? All of the items that he brought up that we may be able to address in our next planning meeting. If we need more enforcement officers right now, maybe we need to look at that. And I think the legality of how is there any way we can stop building permits based on something else, and can we even do it through a site plan, even if it has to be cooperation? I think those are some of the questions. And please, committee, anybody else has any other input into this? I'm just trying to give Director Pink some guidance here. So Mayor Harding.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the one issue, and again, it's trying to understand the true issue on the table, that I think can be a planning discussion in particular, and that is quote unquote blasting. Everyone talks about a blasting bylaw. Do we need it? Do we not need it? And I think that in itself will start to move us a little bit further forward. And Mr. Pink, I think you've been aware, our former CBO, Mr. McDonald, and I had many conversations over the years, and I know there was some initial reports written, so through the archives about what a blasting bylaw may look like, may not look like, the implications of a blasting bylaw. And again, I mentioned specifically if there's one thing that I potentially would put a license to, would be that of blasting, so that they know, and that in itself may, because no one's picking up a blasting cap without an Ontario license to handle blasting caps. And I believe those could be some potentially a starting point for this council and for this municipality, that those people who are going to use dynamite are licensed within the municipality to know the rules and regulations. So that may be an end run, so to speak, to get us to our appropriate finish line. But I think that's an initial conversation that we really should be having around the planning table, the pros and cons and where that may go. And again, with proper consultation from the building industry.
I see you, CAO Hammond, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I seem to recall that Director Pink made some commentary yesterday that he had a plan, part of his work plan involved a review of various bylaws. And so what I'm hearing from committee this morning is that you would like sort of, with respect to the site alteration tree cutting issue, is you kind of want a range of considerations that should be included when it comes time to reviewing that particular area of bylaws and potential policies. So just seeking a bit of clarity there. And then as it relates to the communications piece, it strikes me that that we kind of went from the more general to the specific. My sort of understanding from Councillor Mazan's comments was needing to look at that function and potentially resource it better to be able to deliver messaging going forward once we figure out what it is that we're, the sort of regulatory regime that we're going to end up with. And having said that, I do think that communication is an important piece, and I do think that public education is also important in that regard as it relates to quote Director Pink, and I think he's nailed it, change the culture. And I do agree that I think the township would be very interested in partnerships with the MLA and other friends of Muskoka. Or certainly I would suggest that, you know, council entertain that, because any opportunity that we have to extend our reach, I agree that we should be working with our partners. And I think that Councillor Mazan is right. This is about unity, not division. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
Very quickly, I would ask the chair to maybe, if possible, ask Ms. Eplett just to go through or just give her 2 or 3 items that maybe did not make the list for Director Pink to consider for our next meeting, because he spent a lot of time on this.
Okay, Ms. Eplett, you have some input on that?
Thank you, Chair Bridgman. I have been keeping notes as this has been going through, and we certainly think it is worthwhile having some legal advice looking into what can be included in terms and conditions of approvals that are issued, so that there is a way for there to be real consequences. The fines, regrettably, are meaningless at the levels that we are entitled to charge under the Planning Act, especially given how much money people are able to make by building very large places that they're building. I mean, there is a huge profit incentive for people who are coming to Muskoka. And the communication piece is excellent for the people who are here and love it and need the reminder of what they can cut if they want to do an addition or whatnot. But communication pieces are not going to hit the root of this new threat, this new problem that we have. It's been around for a few years, and we're just seeing it. It's getting out of control. So that's why a great deal of thought was given by people who in the MLA, Friends of Muskoka, with Mr. Oatley. And bottom line, we strongly believe that the licensing system for contractors is the answer. No doubt, many people in the Home Builders Association are going to not want that. But we did have Hugh Smith, who's a very reputable longtime Muskoka builder, say that's what should happen. So the reputable builders, the ones who understand and value what's special up here, they're not going to have a problem with that. We strongly believe that. And the blasting bylaw with a blasting permit, we think is something that we hope Director Pink will have a look at. And I think I think the suggestion that Alan Edwards made, Councillor Edwards, about putting all of islands within the site plan control area is a brilliant idea, because as been said by the mayor, the water on an island all goes one place, which is right into the lake. I'm sorry, I want to loop back just a second. I wasn't prepared to make these comments, but with the blasting permit, if possible, there are, and we put this in our written submission that I sent around to you last night, there should be parameters in blasting permits that indicate what trees are going to be protected, what barriers are going to be put up so that the blast doesn't end up getting into the lake, and where is the blast going to be put. People who are blasting out these huge amounts of property of rock may not always have a plan as to where it's going to go, or they may have a plan that we don't like. So it should be clearly put in a blasting permit where that blast is going to go. So that's off the top of my head. I hope that was helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, good suggestions. How are you doing there, Director Pink? You good? Okay. Okay. Well, I think then we will wait to have Director Pink get back to us at dare I say, the next planning committee meeting. They'll try their best. I know it's we've got so many projects going on, but I believe that this council believes this is a high priority. So I will discuss that with Director Pink afterwards too. So I think we need to have that come back. So, okay, well, listen, thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you, delegates, for your thoughts and comments. And we are now going to actually, seems it's 10:20. Why don't we take a 10-minute comfort break, and then we'll get back to the rest of our agenda and hopefully get through that efficiently. Thank you. Okay, can I get everybody to come back, please? Councillor Nishikama. We're missing Councillor Edwards. I think that's the only one we're missing, right? Okay. All right. So I'm sure Councillor Edwards will pop back in momentarily. Just to follow up from before the break, Director Pink and I have been chatting here. So he's going to just go through what he can deliver to us by next planning meeting. And I think my other comment, which I'm just going to throw out to you, is I know we were talking about licensing short-term rentals. We're now talking about licensing blasting. We're now talking about licensing contractors. I think in the big term, and Director Hammond, this isn't like a tomorrow thing before you get excited about it. I think that's something we really need to review for the next term of council. My comment about becoming like the City of Toronto was quite serious. So that's just my thought at this point. But I'm going to turn this over to Director Pink, and then we just want to make sure that everybody's expectations for the next planning committee meeting are aligned. Director Pink.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. At the risk of sounding a bit like a broken record, I feel like I do have to just say this, though. The municipal planning, building, and bylaw staff are frankly really overwhelmed just with keeping sort of the wheels on the day-to-day operations of the municipality, with the volume of building and planning applications and bylaw complaints that we have been getting. We have a large number of projects on the go on top of that would make, under normal circumstances and normal workloads, a very stressful moment. So I really need to speak to Mr. Kennedy about our ability to try to bring something back. We will do our best, but there are certain limits as to how much we can do. What I do envision, I hope this encapsulates sort of the discussion, and what would be helpful for further discussion next month is a report. We will right away reach out to our legal counsel and ask for an opinion on what I sense is that there's concern that the consequences at our disposal are typically monetary, and that's not a significant deterrent. So I will put to our legal counsel, come up with ideas as to how to have more significant consequences as to penalties that we can impose, typically to do with time, which I sense is likely more of a deterrent when we can ideas such as revoking permits or putting stop work orders on building permits, those sort of ideas, and we can report back, and hopefully our legal counsel can get back to us by August. We can certainly come back with a sort of a rundown of statistics year to date with respect to building permits that we've had year to date, and perhaps 2020, as well as the number of bylaw complaints and bylaw infractions year to date, so we can get a better perspective of the breadth of this issue, or how significant it is, and the amount of resources we should be devoting to it. As well, a bit of a list of bylaws with respect to these areas, sort of the tools at our disposal, the tools that that those bylaws currently have in place, and perhaps what updates we can have to those bylaws in order to have greater control on these situations, whether it's a site plan bylaw and imposing site plan on islands, to changes to the site alteration bylaw, etc., and perhaps a bit of a schedule over the winter where municipal bylaw enforcement staff may be able to bring updates to those. So I think we can do our very best to come back in August with a report that touches on sort of those three areas, and facilitate some more discussion, clarity, and direction from council as to what you wish to see. As I said, if it's a broader discussion or direction, as I say, on a whole sort of licensing department on a number of areas, those are going to be very large long-term projects, and need much further thought and discussion before a report can come back. But again, I think we can aim to have a report on those topics I've just outlined. If there's anything I've missed, happy to take those notes down.
Thank you, Mr. Pink. Any comments on that? Okay, so Councillor Savitz. You just muted yourself, Councillor Savitz.
Totally muted myself. Thank you for that. And ever so briefly, David, and as I've said many times to our CAO, here we are in the public domain, and everyone is watching, and that's what this is all about. This is about tooling up, if you will, sharpening our tools, working with what we have, plus giving you more, David, and staff. Staff does an incredible job with the tasks at hand. And I certainly want to applaud you for that. And it's incumbent on you to seek clarity that you've just done essentially. And please continue to do that. I applaud you for that. And we need to give you those tools to do that job properly. And I hope that we do through budget, through the next year experience. And then of course, as we look at the next term of council, to give you the tools, the staff, the tools this township can take back the night, if you will. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, we're going to move on now, and I'm going to jump now to our item 5C, and I'm going to ask Mr. Snyder to come in and do his report on this. We're going to be able to free up Mr. Snyder, Mr. Bose. Mr. Snyder, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Bridgman, and thank you, committee. As you're aware, some time ago, committee or council, I can't recall, had requested a review and some updated information, a report on the status and potential improvements for our on-site sewage system maintenance inspection program. Here today to present that. I'm sure you've all had a chance to take a look at the report, so I'll do my best to keep it brief. Just some highlights. The discussion today stems from Hastings Highlands resolution and the endorsement by council of that resolution. The report outlines our current processes, seasonal staff inspecting different areas of the township each summer, and then the potential for improvement on that system. It lays out a few options, and I'm happy to field some questions on that and look for some direction on where committee would like to go with this moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder, committee? I know Councillor Mazan has a number of questions, so let's start with you.
I'm trying to find my questions. It feels like our meetings this week have gone crazy, but I do have a couple of questions. The first is, is there a mechanism to be able to bill on their tax bill for septic reinspection? Is that an option? i.e. it could be an incentive, or if you stay on our program, there's an incentive if you don't. So that's my first question.
Okay, would that be Mr. Donaldson, who probably isn't here, or can you answer that, Mr. Snyder?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The Ontario Building Code and the Building Code Act sets out the statutory authorities for those things. We can engage in a discretionary program similar to what we have now. The next step potential from what we're doing now would be the introduction of more of a mandated, it doesn't become mandatory, but more of a establishing the boundaries of that. If we go that route, that would require that all septic systems within the township be inspected, and setting out the parameters of those inspections, timelines, the requirements of inspections, and the different types of inspection for varied information that we have on each property. So I think your question is it possible that if someone endorses the system, they can remain on the system? It's not so simple as that, I guess. It would be that every septic inspection or every septic system has to be reviewed within those timelines, if I've understood the question correctly.
For my clarity, Councillor Mazan, I think the question was if we have some sort of a program in place and owners don't follow it, can we charge them on our tax bill? Was that, or did I misunderstand what you were saying, Ms. Mazan?
Sorry. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. And I think I probably wasn't completely clear. As I said, I was trying to find my notes too. So if we, for example, had a staff-led initiative, is there an opportunity, and I leapt right to the tax incentive, but is there a mechanism or a way for us to have some of that cost absorbed, or the cost of the inspections absorbed by the homeowner? So, so there is kind of these different options that were presented to us that, you know, I do like the idea of staff being in the driver's seat on something that's so significant, especially about something like septics and the ability for it to impact our core thing, which is water quality, but trying to offset the cost of that. So I'm hopeful that that gives a bit further clarity to my question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Mr. Snyder.
Yes, and thank you through you, Chair. Yes, there would be opportunity for the financial burden to be absorbed to some degree by the user. That would have to be established again through the creation of the parameters.
Okay, and I think I heard from you, sorry, is it okay, Chair Bridgman, if I continue? Okay. I think I heard through you, if a program like this was initiated, then it needs to be applied to all, which is not the case today, correct? Like we do an inspection program on the waterfront properties, but this then would have to be applied to all. So the supplementary question is there a mechanism for us to do any kind of grants or loans? Like I did see in the FOCA report, there are different opportunities for those where, you know, if your septic really needed to be, what's the word, rehabilitated. There's mechanisms to help homeowners to be able to do such a thing if financially that was a difficult task. So maybe I'm asking two things here.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes, and thank you. I will address the grants. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with the grants. It's not something that would be administered through the building department or the building code. There may be grants available, but at this time, that's not something that is administered through our department. Outside bodies may offer that. And sorry, if you could repeat the second part or the first part.
No, I don't. So I'm not doing a very good job. Sorry, Mr. Snyder. I apologize. I think you've actually answered my question. So I'm going to move to the third and then I'll allow it. Looks like Mayor Harding has his hand up too. This is a practical question. It looks to me like in the US that they, in some jurisdictions, allow for an updated septic report with every property transfer. Is that something that can happen here in Ontario?
Mr. Snyder?
I'm not sure if that's a legislated requirement. I'm sure it's not a legislated requirement, I should say. The ability to require that may be something that could be, again, if it's addressing our property standards bylaw or creating a standalone septic reinspection program bylaw, that could be addressed through that. I would caution that approach, as the administrative end of that could become onerous where properties are selling multiple times in short time spans. So the staff time administratively could become quite onerous, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for actually being patient with my questions right there. I'll turn it
Thank
over
you for
to
being
Chair
patient with my
Bridgman.
answers.
Yes, so thank you. So before I go to you, Mayor Harding, I think Director Pink could help a little bit with some of Councillor Mazan's questions. Director Pink?
Thank you, through the chair. I think hopefully this, I understood your first question correctly, but just I think this might help all committee members just wrap their head around it a little bit better. And I'm no means an expert, and I look to Mr. Voss and Mr. Snyder to help me out if I misspeak. But essentially right now, the system we have in place can be looked at as quite flexible. There's no associated bylaw. So essentially every year, municipal staff identifies certain lakes or certain areas that perhaps warrant some increased inspection. And we look at those areas. What the options that we put before you is called a discretionary system under the Ontario Building Code, but it would require the passage of a bylaw. And that bylaw, it would be up to council's determination as to which areas you identify, which I think was Councillor Mazan's question. You do not have to identify the entire township. For example, we don't currently typically inspect rural properties. So you could set an area by bylaw that will become part of that discretionary system. But please keep in mind, once you identify that area, every system within it must be inspected. So you cannot identify the waterfront and say, well, we won't do 9 Mile Lake. The whole area will have to be inspected. But within that bylaw, you can set a priority. So you will identify systems and sort of a schedule that perhaps troubled areas or suspect systems could be looked at first. So you may not have to inspect every system promptly, but you will have to inspect all of them. So again, these are the types of facilitated discussion that I hope we can get today some clarity for council, so that when we come back, committee, when we come back to committee with an updated report, we can put those details in a bylaw for future discussion. So again, is there a wish to look at communities, rural areas? Is it all parts of the waterfront? What type of schedule are you looking at? And then staff can go back and piece together a program and outline again the budgetary impacts, administrative consequences of that type of system. So I hope that frames the discussion and answers Councillor Mazan's, I think, initial question.
Thank you, Director Pink. Mayor Harding.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Snyder, for the report. As I think most people know, this has been something I've been looking forward to for a few years now. I'm going to jump straight to option C, which is a homeowner responsibility. I think every single septic system across the township of Muskoka Lakes needs to be inspected at least once every 5 years. I appreciate the comments that enforcement may be an issue. Well, do we want to protect the environment, or do we not want to protect the environment? And if I've got a leaking septic system, then we need to enforce that. That is a fundamental issue. Is it, Councillor Mazan, we'd like to staff lead this versus a contractor lead it. In our building department, when somebody wants to come in for a planning application, we don't go out and do a survey of the property. We let a contractor survey a property and provide us with that legal information about what the property dimensions are, and then we evaluate that within our planning department. There are many septic haulers, and if we put together a program that says a septic hauler must check A, B, C, D, make sure things are functioning, the same thing that our summer students are doing today, I don't think it's overly onerous. That it also would probably increase pump outs. And if we do it once every 5 years, let's say it costs $150. We're talking about a $30 increase every year to make sure our septic systems are properly maintained. Yes, we may, especially in the first year or two, need to make sure that we have an increased staff inside, one staff member to manage all of this within the municipality. But if we care about this environment, we know that they are the biggest issues, and those are septic systems. Our current program does a great job in the summertime, but we are certainly not getting to every property every 5 years. We can, in a simple swoop, put this back on the homeowner. They can pay the major cost of it. And again, if they are not in compliance and they don't provide a certificate, then number one, we can also send out our staff if they don't send it in to check on it. We can implement fines that can go on a tax bill. To Councilor Mazandy, your comment, can we help subsidize people to fix their septic systems? Is it really our job when someone's roof is leaking to fix their roof or their septic system? We can shut them down, as we've done on commercial properties before, if they're not in compliance. And that's a fundamental cost of home ownership, that you need to have an appropriately functioning septic system. Mr. Boss will regularly shut down people's septic systems today when we find things inappropriate, and they must be paid for and fixed by the homeowner themselves. So I don't sure we're going to have a problem of people having to fix their septic systems, and they should do it if we again believe in the environment. So I am fully supportive of option C and putting together some simple regulatory framework that the homeowner will contract their pump out contractor or another list of prescribed people who can inspect their system once every 5 years, and we require a certificate from that individual that gets matched to the home to make sure they're done. I think it's the next step in evolution to our game. I do not want to increase our staff complement to do it on their behalf and then charge everybody's tax bill that much more. I think it's easy for the homeowner to do it. So those are my comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm in receipt, having just had my septic pumped out after 4 years. And so if I can, I would like to direct a question to Mr. Boss, if I might. Welcome, Mr. Boss. Nice to see you again, sir. So on my bill, and you know, I fully expected this, they come out, two people, huge truck, $365 to pump a 1,500 gallon tank. That's fine, $365. The District of Muskoka charges an additional $225 for a disposal fee. So I guess I would ask Sandy, with all his hundreds of years of experience, is this something in terms of the township? Do we get value? I mean, we're talking about adding to a tax bill, et cetera, et cetera. Clearly, there are costs associated with enhanced inspection, if you will. What's your sort of, you've been involved in this for so long. What do you think of the township or the District of Muskoka charging $225 for, I guess, a disposal fee? I'd just like to hear what you have to say about that.
Mr. Boss? I think you're on mute. Mayor Harding?
Yeah, Sandy, for some reason his microphone's not working, but I can also comment on that because it comes through engineering and public works. The receipt of septage that we get takes cost, time, and money to process that through our plants to be able to put that back into the water table. We've had some septage haulers complain because we raised it literally $3 per pump out, and they're showing the cost. But we are losing money in doing so, and our plants have to have capacity to handle that. The same way as when you are on sewer and water in the urban centers, you pay a charge accordingly as the water you're receiving in and a septic charge going out, because that needs to be processed. And that's the idea, that our plants within the urban centers are self-sufficient and don't hit on the general tax base. So for our pump outs to be delivered in there would increase the urban levies, and it should be shared by those people using the system. So that's why there's a District of Muskoka charge. And let me say, we lose money on it. It's not a profitable process.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Mr. Boss, would you like to comment? I don't know if, can we hear you now? I'm sorry, but I don't think your microphone is, no, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
I'm going to suggest his input is not set to his computer speakers, maybe to his headset on
Right.
this call.
Did you hear that, Mr. Boss? Maybe your input is on your headphones? We can't hear you. Did Mayor Harding basically cover what you would have said? Okay, good. We're good. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Very interesting, Councillor Zavitz. I had just booked a septic tank pump out. I get it done every 3, maybe every 4 years, and the price that was given to me by the haulage company was $375. And I thought, boy, that's down this time, because I remember paying more. So they're giving me a price based on what they charge, and I will probably see that 225, which is totally understandable that it's got to be paid. So I'm fully supportive of taking the baby steps, as the mayor was suggesting that we go back to the owner, the house owner. It would make sure that at least every 5 years, every system would get pumped out. When we the township introduced the current system of inspection, I know on Leonard Lake, there was at least 4 orders that were placed to shut down steel tanks. So that, and through the process, I don't know how many we shut down. We probably shut down a lot and improved the situation. We got to take the next step. And the next step is that. I just have one question, and Sandy, you're going to have to use sign language, because maybe your volume on your do we do islands? I guess it's a shaking of the head. Do we inspect islands? Yes, we do.
Yes, you do.
All right. So because I'd heard one recently, it has been looked at for, they think it's working, but they haven't had it pumped out ever. So I just wondered, okay, that's enough. But I'm fully supportive of starting something. As the mayor said, put the onus back on the property owner. It's the only way we're really going to protect it. And we're going to know, because they take the lid off. They came to my place, they took my lid off, and we have, a biology major or an English major who's looking in my septic tank. And but if you have a professional that pumps it out, he or she will know just with the flow back into the tank whether it's cracked. So that's just a very simple check. So I support C, getting the contractors, getting the homeowner to be responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I have very mixed feelings about what I think I'm requesting. So as a responsible property owner, I'm going to be penalized because I'm being responsible. I certainly have had conversations with Sandy over the years about the same topic, and along with the particular septic hauler that I've dealt with for years. And in fact, the number of properties that I represent, we have a schedule, and that septic hauler, and in fact, even when the property owner has called me and said, gee, it's only year 2, but let's get it pumped again. And interestingly enough, that's where the education comes in, because they say, they will share with me the type of system that, and the larger, I would say more expensive systems, but certainly the better systems that are in place. You can keep pumping all you want, but the reality is, for it to work properly, it needs stuff in it. And you can't, I just don't think it's a cut and dry thing. And I do take a little bit of, I'm just concerned that we're going to try and penalize people, that the fact is that people have been doing the good thing all along and for many years. And a system, at least in my area, has been in place. Though that septic hauler, they will tell me, okay, this happened at this date kind of thing. This is the track that we have suggested you be on. I just don't know that council is aware of that type of information. But I don't want us to go around saying everybody's a criminal and therefore let's charge more money because we need more people to inspect every system. I think a lot of the problems are known. A lot more need to be learned about. But I've said this for years, and certainly Watershed Council has, or the Friends, I'll just say, have also pointed this out, that our lakes have improved. The health of our lakes have improved over the years, and let's not ignore that. Yes, we've made great strides at trying to even get it better, but we're not in dire straits here. We do have some, we heard that, we certainly with the Islander discussions over the last few weeks, we've heard from some that said they didn't know that they had to have their septic pump. Well, that was concerning. So then you educate that particular individual. But again, I don't think that everyone should be penalized. I think that there is a larger majority of people that are doing the right things. Certainly, again, I think that at least I've been fortunate enough to be able to have conversations with the septic inspector, and I think we should be very careful when we just start throwing around numbers and start thinking we're going to start implementing lots of different things. Let's look at the bigger picture. I'm just going to be that property owner, that taxpayer that is going to say, well, why am I being penalized? I'm doing the right thing. That's all I'm concerned about.
Thank you, Councillor Nishikawa. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe the mayor can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought $225 was excessive and that, because I remember when the sewers haulage came into the district and they were all going to throw their keys on the table and stop hauling it because of the charge that was rolled back. And I know it did go up $3 this year, but I thought it was about $140, $143 and that. So I think maybe they're padding the bill a little bit. We can check that out and that. And as far as the district, you pay more per gallon or per metric meter of it than somebody in the city. And that, and yes, there are charges for it, but it does go through the system and that, so that maybe there's a loss. But the thing is this, for the environment, it's really good that we are getting them pumped. So if we can keep the cost down, and that it would be good. But again, maybe the mayor can answer, but I thought that we'd rolled it back and that like this increase this year was just $3, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Handily, the mayor was up next anyway. Mayor Harding?
Thank you. Again, I don't believe it's $225. It all depends on the liter volume. Councillor Zavitz said, I think he has a 1,500 liter tank, so that's potentially why there's an increased charge. Yes, it was a $3 charge increase this year that people got upset about. But again, it's $3 on a standard 1,000 liter tank. So it really is not a big issue. And some haulers may pad the bill and not be exact as to what the district. So I'm not saying they do or they don't. I want to respond back to Councillor Nishikawa's comment. And I can tell you, I have my system pumped regularly. I had it pumped at the beginning of last season. Later on in the season, our volunteer, or not our volunteer, but our student septic inspectors inspected my entire system from both cottages to the septic tank, and they found an issue that my pump out team did not, that I was unaware of. And the idea of what our summer students do is a full septic inspection. That is what is needing to be done, because there's more to be done than just pumping out a holding tank. For those who bought any kind of property recently, when you have a septic inspection done, they do complete flow tests. The amount of water that's going in through the taps, they should be able to see coming out in the holding tank. When you don't see that, you realize you've got a leak in the system somewhere. Some of those additional things are what are being contemplated here and what our summer students can do to protect the environment. It's not just about pumping out a tank. So let me just clarify that going forward. And there are many good people. And again, I would have considered myself good, but we found a problem with my system that I was unaware of until somebody inspected my system. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you. I'm actually really enjoying this conversation, which is ironic, but I'm learning a lot. A couple of questions. The first is, and the mayor may have to be the one to answer this. If we approached it with the homeowner responsibility, I think I heard you say we could create some regulatory framework that would help, because it's the last comment that on the staff report. Further, if property owners are simply not compliant with their obligations, enforcement may be challenging given the larger number of systems in the township. So I'm just trying to make sure that if we put this burden on the homeowner, you know, similar to what the conversation we just had, for those who either the cost or the burden, they may not want to do it, so they don't follow the rules. You know, are there mechanisms in place to try to protect us against that? Because those are ultimately the ones that are probably going to be the problem.
Okay, I think that was directed to the mayor, and I know he wants to answer.
Thank you. So again, my high level thinking is if a homeowner system shows a problem, they must rectify the problem. The same way as when our summer students find a problem on a septic, our homeowner must rectify the problem. Yes, we are going to identify more problems on this particular issue. Do we want to fix the environment or not? If we have to get more staff to enforce the fixing of these, we can do so. I would rather put more staff directed at the exact problem when we know it's a problem versus finding problems. And from a financial perspective, we can at that point put a charge, again, put it through bylaws, what I heard Mr. Pink talk about. We change our bylaws that when you do not produce a pass certificate, we put $1,000 charge annually on there, or whatever the number is, on their tax bill. You can rest assured they're going to get that fixed pretty quickly than continuing to pay that increased fine and that increased charge. The mechanics of how we follow this up is what I'd like staff to kind of further investigate. I think the point of today is we want to go A, B, or C. And I'll say again, my preference is on C. It should be minimal cost to the homeowner, and we'll let it go from there. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so
can I ask a supplemental?
Can I let Director Pink wanted to address what you were saying, Councillor Mazan. So can we let him just pop in for a minute?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Bourbon. Sorry to interrupt. I just I wanted to mention a few things. There seems to be some desire to go with option C, and that's certainly fine. Staff can investigate that, but I did want to point out a few things so that committee is aware, because I think Councillor Mazan touched on those comments in the report, and certainly can expand on them a little bit. I think Mayor Harding excellently outlined, if I don't want committee to have the perception that because everyone pumps out their tank every 3 to 4 to 5 years that will address it. The pump out haulers really just look at the tank. And there is a part of the report that talks about phase 1 and phase 2 inspections. And it will not just be the every 4 or 5 year haul out that will necessarily identify the issues that the homeowner will have to submit to us. So there is a bit more of that burden on the landowner to do hire a contractor to do more thorough inspection than simply just a pump out. So I want committee to be cognizant of that. I think staff's principal concern is, and I think this is what you were alluding to, in theory, in an ideal world, option C may be the best. It's simple, may not need much more staff oversight, put the onus on the owner. But as noted in the staff report, there's approximately 10,000 systems in the township. So what is the township going to do 4 years from now when we've received 500 reports. It's not just easy to say we'll cross that bridge at that time. That will be a significant matter to follow through on all those owners if they're not compliant with this bylaw and submitting their inspections. The alternative is, what if in 5 years on Mr. Boss's desk lands 9,000 reports? He has to review those, or some staff do, review those, follow up on those, file those, organize those. So it's a fairly significant change to our current operations that I think council needs to be cognizant of. I agree, Mayor Harding, if the importance is great, and if we need to put resources to it, then that's perhaps what council needs to do. But I want council to be cognizant of those, that it, again, in theory, option C looks quite simple, but in practice, it may not be. And there will have to be some thought by council at budget time in that regard. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Director Pink. Actually, I think you do a 5-year rolling 2,000 a year. And that would really cut down on some of the issues that you were talking about. Sorry, Councillor Mazan, follow up.
It's a second question, if I may, but that did I think I've been trying to look at what staff's thoughts are here, and obviously with every option, there's some good and there's some challenges to be contemplated. And I think just, my current unease is just handing it over, probably because I don't have a full understanding of how something else new would work. But given our whole discussion about enforcement and our ability to kind of control, septics was one thing that was really loudly and clearly articulated to me as a major issue, especially with the changing weather patterns with climate change, just the sensitivity towards lakes. So second question on that, or comment maybe. Director Pink had brought up there's different areas that we need to look at. There's the areas, it's the schedule and the budgetary, and those are things that you'll be looking at. As far as the schedule, obviously that's under your purview to come back and tell us. I would just suggest that it's probably smart to follow the science. So if it's saying that every 10 years is the right time, then I'd say build the schedule around that. Like we should be building the schedule around what the science is telling us. And I think Councillor Nishikawa's point was brought up that if in fact the Watershed Council saying water is improving, and actually it should be only 15 years, every 15 years, then that's one schedule. If it should be every 5 years, then that's a completely different schedule. So thanks for the comment.
Thank you. And Councillor Hayes.
I apologize. I wasn't here for the beginning, so I may be repeating something. The two items, the $3 increase, I don't think that was an issue. The issue was that the pumpers didn't know about it for a number of months, so they didn't pass that charge along to their people, and I think that's been addressed. The other thing is, I agree with Councillor Nishikawa. People that are looking after their septics should be penalized. But then again, if there's half a dozen of us that are doing the right thing, but Joe down the road doesn't, what Joe does affects all of us. So I think that this should be something that staff has more of a handle on rather than the owner, because that would allow staff to control the number of inspections per year that he could be handled easily. And it would also allow him to quickly respond to any areas that suddenly become hotspots. So those are just my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much. I'd like to get Sandy Boss's and that comment. First of all, Sandy, do we ever do dye testing?
Sandy, have you fixed your microphone?
Can you go yes or no?
Yeah. No, we can't hear you. Okay, do we ever do dye testing?
If I
No.
may.
No, okay.
Oh, Mr.
Yes,
Snyder?
okay, yeah, you would know, Mr. Snyder.
Yeah, it's not been a common practice for some years.
Okay.
And I
Because-
would say it's never been a common practice, maybe I should say.
Okay, I know some areas have used it, and that because if you have a leak somewhere and and that even food coloring does it, that's one thing. Secondly, if you make it private contractors, I know for years there was furnace contractors going around and telling people they did new furnace if they were short of work, and they maybe didn't. And that, so this is, you can get unscrupulous contractors going around selling systems that may not be need to work. So this is just some of the things I'd like to maybe hold this off until Mr. Boss could actually address council. And then we'll look at it, because there's pros and cons to everything, is like anything else that we do. And that, but like I say, it is something, it is an issue. And that, but we, you just can't and that blanket it right off the bat. So I'd like to hear what he has to say on this before we even move this forward. Thank you.
So maybe I could ask Mr. Boss what your thoughts are on this, and I'm even thinking the chat function, or somebody can phone you. The IT difficulties have been really hard in this 2-day meeting, I have to tell you. So would you have a comment on your preference on these? You could do 1, 2, or 3. Good plan. I'm not sure who you're phoning, but. Okay, you could do that, but you have to, if you're phoning in, you have to disconnect from your computer. You have to sign out of the meeting if you're going to come in by phone. Why don't you call Mr. Snyder, and then if he holds his phone up to the microphone, we can hear you.
Apologies, Chair. That is what I tried to do. And I think there was some difficulty there.
Yeah, well, he could call a number for the meeting and then come in by phone, but I don't know if we've lost him now and he would know to do that.
Let me call him again and try to facilitate that.
Would you, rather than hold this off, I would rather see it move forward myself. And if that's critical information, obviously, we could get that, hopefully.
Bear with me.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Harding, in the meantime?
You're not on now. What do I do?
Mayor Harding?
Okay, thank you. I was trying to see if Nick got him on. I guess for council's perspective, and I appreciate Councillor Ebert's comment that a contractor could try and manipulate the system. For me, what it allows us to do is, and I agree, whether it's a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year horizon, I think staff need to get back to us on that. But if so many are done a year, and a contractor sends us a report that this system isn't functioning properly, then our staff can go further investigate. But it gives us basically summer students every day of the year to investigate systems. And that's the bottom line. It gives us a greater initial investigation to find the problems. And by putting the initial investigation on the homeowner through their contractor, whatever it is, helps us identify the hot spots and the problems. It's not going to be a whole street or a whole bank. And maybe there are 20 or 30 a year that we find. Eventually, we're going to fix all of these, but it starts to deal with the problem today, not just on, and again, I love our summer students, but we're going to be 30 years before we can hit every property. That's a fundamental. So this accelerates the time frame by allowing us to get some high level, and I'm talking about a high level report that will catch many of the issues that we're looking for with minimal cost to the homeowner. And I think that's the other thing. Whatever it is that Sandy wants and our summer students check off, that's what the kind of form we would ask our homeowners to do, and have their contractor, their pump out contractor, or if they want the township to do it for a $100 cost, we send out somebody from the township to do it. So I just don't want to overcomplicate this or say we're losing control when we ask the homeowners to produce a report. Again, I equate it the same thing when I have to get a planning app, I have to produce a survey. It could be a simple sketch that we go through and validate on some surveys. That's what we're looking for, more interaction dialogue with the homeowners about their entire system.
Okay, great. We have Sandy on the line. We're just going to bring him in so he can chat with us.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful music to our ears, I have to tell you.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Edwards, would you like to go back and just repeat what you were asking?
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'd asked, and I think I got the answer. We don't do dye testing, and that which would show up in some instances. Simple food coloring down your sink
Down
or
the toilet.
toilet will help. That's one of the things. And I don't know up here, but I know, like I say, with the furnace industry and everything else like that, with testing, there were some unscrupulous contractors for selling people something they actually didn't need. And that now, as the mayor said, which might make sense, if a contractor does say that it's faulty, could we then examine it for the homeowner just to make sure that they aren't being sold something that they really don't need? And that.
Okay, but I believe your other comment was we really wanted to hear from Sandy about the options.
Well, yeah,
I
and
believe you
I'd like
wanted
to
that
hear
input.
the options as well, and that, because like I say, and that it is something, and it makes it hard because some people are single, they're only there 6 months a year or two. Others have, 20, 30 people every weekend. So it makes it hard, and that for that. So I'd just like to get his comments on that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Boss, if you'd like to give your comments.
Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me, and I'm glad to participate. As far as the option C, I think what would be more appropriate would be a combination of option C and B, where older systems will require the homeowner to engage a qualified individual to carry out the work. Problem is, there's just not very many people that are licensed to carry out that type of work. And just on the situation that we are having right now, due to the how busy everybody is, we've asked people to carry out a full phase 2 inspection of their sewage system, and they're unable to find anybody to do it. Most installers are so busy that they can't do it, and they are licensed to carry out that type of work, as well as designers, and we've only have a handful of designers in the area that do that type of work. In some municipalities, they've engaged an engineering firm to carry out re-inspections on all properties through an area. Lake Huron, for instance, that area had been inspected by one of the larger engineering firms. Now, they're doing exactly the same thing we are, basically hiring students to go house to house to do the inspections. How thorough those inspections are, well, I can tell you they're not as thorough as we would like. Just for instance, I did an inspection for somebody on Lake Huron just because he was a friend. He didn't want to pay the $150 fee that the engineering firm was charging. I found a number of deficiencies. The municipality wouldn't accept my my inspection because they hired this firm to carry out the work. The firm did the inspection and didn't find any of the deficiencies that I found. So that kind of tells you that doesn't necessarily, just because we have an engineering firm involved, doesn't mean that the inspections are going to be carried out as thorough as possible. So my recommendation to the committee is that we do a combination of both requiring on older systems that they engage somebody to carry out that work. If we limit the number of systems that require that, the more the better chance that they'll actually find somebody that can carry out that inspection on their behalf. We certainly don't want to require everybody to have pump outs, and I don't think that's what Mayor Harding's asking. As council, as committee knows, we have a real issue with where we're disposing our waste. Larger tanks like that 1,500 gallon tank that Councillor Savitz had mentioned, it may not require pump out in 10 years because of the size of the tank and the amount of use that he gives it. So another important item about pump outs is septic tanks require bugs to work. If you pump your tank out too often, it may take a year for that bacteria to be reactivated, to be breaking down the organics in your systems. We don't want to require people to pump out on a standard basis. Yes, 3 to 5 years is kind of a guideline, but some of these larger tanks and systems that are only used through the summer and only a few months, they may not require pump outs for 15, maybe even 20 years. So requiring pump outs, I am totally against that. More restrictive requirements on systems that are older, making it requirement that people that rent out their facility, their properties, requiring them to have inspections on their systems and more frequent pump outs, maybe that's appropriate. But again, that's a different direction in another discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandy. Councillor Zowitz.
Thank you, and through you and to Sandy's wonderful, there's some great points there. I will say that the contractor who I contacted about doing the pump out actually told me that I didn't need it pumped out. So it was done in 2017, hadn't been done since 2011 prior. It is a large tank, and they said, Glenn, you don't need it done. I was having some issues, and I think it was all related to the massive amounts of rain. And again, there's another point that we need to consider. I was having a check valve, water was coming back in and my pump was running. Anyway, so filters, etc. The point being is these things need maintenance, and here we are storing it on our property, trying to keep it away from the lake. So I certainly support Sandy in his commentary. Thank you.
Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, through you to Sandy Boss. Sandy, originally when people build their homes, they state how many bedrooms they're going to have. Is there any way when the inspectors go around, they could just generally ask how many bedrooms do you have? And we could check and see if it was different, because I know that sometimes, not always, but where a cottage is going to be rented out, all of a sudden 3 or 4 extra bedrooms show up in the basement that were not there when the original septic system was put in. And this would give you an idea of how often that particular one would have to be looked at.
Sandy?
Yes, that is one of the questions, and as part of the form that's completed by the cottage owner is how many bedrooms they have. And yes, we are finding that there's been a bunkie snuck in, between the installation of the sewage system that, maybe 20, 30, maybe even 40 years old. There's an additional bunkie been added or bedroom added within the building with or without a building permit. So yes, we are asking that. We have orders already being issued on some of those properties that are being rented out, showing that they've got 5 bedrooms when the sewage systems are only suitable for 3 bedrooms. So yes, we are chasing those down. The reinspection program are noting if there's an additional bunkie, the use permits that were issued, the certificate of approvals, our building permits for septics all indicate how many bedrooms, whether there's a separate bunkie, and those are noted. If there's an additional building and we know that it's a 3-bedroom dwelling based on their certificate of approval that was issued through the Ministry of Environment, then we have the ability to go after those people that their sewage system is undersized. So yes, we are definitely finding those and acting upon any of those findings.
Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
This is good news. If we implement something, we have to go on the property checker, or someone does, and they will get an indication if of illegal builds. So I think I like that.
Okay, Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, it's you. And I did freeze for a little bit, so I just wanted to get. I think I heard from Mr. Boss that his recommendation was to find a hybrid approach between B and C, which is the contractor-led and homeowner responsibility. But I just wanted to get that confirmation. That was staff's
That's correct.
That's staff's recommendation. Okay, thank you.
So can I ask you, Mayor Harding, because you were the one who suggested C, a hybrid approach, a report going forward on that. Can we get your comments on that, please?
Absolutely, and I'll always defer to Sandy because he understands greater issues. And if a option C with an addition of certain points for option 2 or B, then absolutely. So I just look forward to getting a program in place that we can start to manage. So I think today is a good discussion, good starting point. And again, I appreciate Sandy's input and Mr. Snyder's input as we move this forward, and look forward to this coming back to Planning Committee with some more details fleshed out.
Okay, thank you. So I think we have I think we have direction, Director Pink. Do you want any more? Oh, we have a resolution. Sorry, hang on. Let me find it. We're out of order. The climate change one page is long. Hang on. Okay, here we are. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved, the Planning Committee recommends to Township Council that staff be directed to prepare a report with recommended updates and enhancements to the Township's on-site sewage system maintenance inspection program based on the direction received at the Planning Committee meeting of July 16th, 2021. I'm sorry. Okay, hang on a second. Sorry, we just didn't know whether we had to be more prescriptive in the motion. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Snyder and Mr. Boss, for your time.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, Chair.
It's a hybrid of 2 and 3. Yes, sorry. Thank you. You got that for the minutes? Okay. Okay. All right. We are going to now go back to the number A, which is our shipping containers, and I believe that's Director Pink. Director Pink.
Thank you, Chair. Just in the interest of time, just very quickly, a staff report begins on page 443 in your agenda packages. I'm sure committee members recall we had a number of lengthy discussions on shipping containers with respect to 2 development applications that we had before Planning Committee. I believe it was at the May Council meeting. Council requested that staff receive a legal opinion on ways to control the building materials within the shipping containers. There was concerns raised about potential contamination. Again, staff did receive that legal opinion. I've highlighted the finer points in the staff report. Essentially, as largely discussed by staff at the meeting, there's really limited to no opportunity to control those aspects through the typical planning tools, being the zoning bylaw, site plan control, or building code act. They do lay out the potential option of a bylaw under the Municipal Act, but a caution that extensive amount of research and thought needs to be put into such a regulatory scheme if we did want to pursue it. So again, following up on Council's direction to receive a legal opinion on that matter, I hope it answers the questions that were raised, and happy to answer any questions of committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pink. Any comments, committee? Councillor Roberts.
Sorry, I just need to follow up one question with Director Pink. At the application that we had a couple months ago or whatever, we asked the applicant to remove the floor. Do we still continue to do that, or can we still continue to ask that?
Director Pink.
Thank you. As noted, I think earlier this morning, and as noted by the legal opinion, there's really no authority for the municipality to do that. With that said, if there's a willing applicant, they can enter into that agreement, although again, would not be binding on future owners. Staff's hesitant to make those requests, given the lack of authority to do so. These two came before council. That was council's prerogative to make those requests, and we did that. I don't think I can state we're imposing that on other owners. With that said, I'm not aware of numerous, if any, other shipping container site plans off the top of my head. There may be the odd one, but it's not overly common. So if that answers the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pink. Any other comments? Okay, thank you for that report and getting the legal opinion. We are now going to move on to the climate emergency declaration and action. And this is from Mr. Hammond. And Mr. Hammond, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This report is further to the Climate Action Muskoka delegation that we received last month. The cover report contains a suggested resolution, and the appendix is essentially a joint Muskoka CAO report, which documents the efforts of the CAOs to develop a collaborative approach or process to develop a climate action plan for each lower tier municipality.
Go.
Just getting some feedback there. Is everything okay? Okay. In essence, as it relates to the corporate climate action plan, we're proposing to establish an intermunicipal staff committee consisting of finance, planning, public works staff to work together to create what we're calling a baseline document. So that would come back to, in our case, that would come back to our strategic leadership team, who would consider that baseline document, then include the particular circumstances of Muskoka Lakes into the document. And then that would come back to committee and council for consideration. And so that would sort of chart out our climate lens and how we plan, the actions we plan to take going forward. So they can be integrated into future budgets, work plans, and the like. So then as it relates to community awareness, outreach and education, it's envisioned that that plan will sort of speak to a community component. However, knowing that climate change doesn't respect municipal boundaries, and in an effort to ensure coordination and avoid duplication, we're suggesting participation in the district's efforts to develop a community-focused, Muskoka-wide engagement approach. And so we think that that approach can allow for engagement in Muskoka Lakes, but allow for learnings from the other communities across Muskoka. Lastly, Madam Chair, I would note that as Climate Action Muskoka previously delegated with Bracebridge, Huntsville, and Lake Bays, those councils, and this is just by way of information only, but those councils have considered similar reports, obviously the same joint Muskoka CAO report, and they've endorsed the recommendations of that joint report. So happy to answer any questions from committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hammond. Committee, questions, comments? Councillor Roberts?
Again, I apologize, but this is a subject that's very dear to my heart. And I want to thank the CAOs of the district for jumping in here and bringing a plan that we can move forward with. But I think we got to do something at the township level, given that our target is an 8% decrease in greenhouse gases. over the next 8 years, or we're in trouble. And, you know, we can all have to do our little bit. So when I read the report there, given that it appears that tangible actions are likely to start Q3 in 2022, I'm recommending and asking that the committee consider establishing as soon as possible a climate change community working group for the Township of Muskoka Lake that would be formed to suggest this year mitigation programs and initiatives that the township must take in an attempt to achieve any 2022 reductions in greenhouse gases. I'd be more than willing to participate in that working committee. From what I've read and been provided, there appears to be many low cost, no cost, low hanging fruit or quick hits that our township can work on for next year. But in order to get the budget that's needed to do this, or to get them, you know, on the docket to action, it is imperative that the council understand this year, 2021, so that when we go into the budget process in 2022, we have an idea what we can do, and then be able to actually be in a position to provide more information on the overall plan that's going to be delivered Q2 or Q3 by the CAO planning group for climate change. So again, just in summary, my question is, I would like to start now so that we can get ready for the 2022 budget to get to establish the funds needed to address climate change, the township's climate change actions in 2022. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Hammond.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. The report notes that staff will be documenting what we're currently doing now. And basically we need to establish a plan. And part of that plan coming back may include joining the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection program, which will move into documenting what we're producing for greenhouse gases. And being part of an intermunicipal consortium, if you will, going forward on developing common climate action plans will allow us to potentially down the road procure jointly consultants to allow us to identify greenhouse gas emissions and reduction plans. I'm cognizant of the amount of work that staff have on their plates now, trying to integrate this into existing programs, and this plan will lay out what we should be doing corporately.
A follow-up, please, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councillor Roberts.
I am all about planning. I've been talking about that a long time. And I have presented money plans to executives. And I know the executives want to work the plans, but they're also they ask, if we can't get something done in 3 months that's tangible or low cost, then we shouldn't be doing it. And I think that I like the idea of the plan. I fully support the plan, but there's things that we can do in 2022 with money to start the ball rolling. And to wait for 9 years, and if everything is factual that our climate change people are telling us, that 9 years isn't a long time. We'll be in trouble if we don't start now. And we're just one little drop in the bucket. But those are my final points on that. Thank you.
Could I ask a question then, CEO Hammond? Because my understanding is we are doing things now, and that's going to be part of a report that comes back to council. Would there be a few things that might be added in because at that report is because we don't. I understand we can't put a working group together. Our staff is really fulsome, and I agree with this. So I guess what I'm asking you is, will there be something coming forward budget-wise for us in terms of what we might do on an interim basis? I'm trying to help Councillor Roberts here in answering that question.
Madam Chair, Mr. Pink and I could probably give some thought if council's wanting to have staff identify some potential interim measures with respect to putting them in the budget for consideration. Certainly, I think that we could do that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I know we're already doing things, you know, I know Director Becking has said that. So Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Hopefully you're not hearing the loud noises from outside as the contractors are carrying on, but I just wanted to say, I don't know where this is going to go, this my comment. For years, as a councillor, not just me, other councillors have raised our fleet management plan, and I can't help but recognize the size of the vehicles, for instance, that district uses. You know, their system of having different vehicles, and if someone needs it, you sign it out, all of that. But in fact, they're using smaller vehicles. Not everybody is driving around in a pickup truck. I am concerned about that. Again, over the years, we've asked for this, and we actually, I think it has been the unfortunate situation that we have had such a large amount of staff turnover over the years, the director, and that we never really got there. So again, I believe Director Becking had mentioned at some point that he was going to be that fleet manager type person and things, but those are those little items. I'm not going to say little items, the big item in our municipality that Councillor Roberts had mentioned. We can start dealing with some of these things now. It is interesting to me because that, granted, well, I'm going to just say a lot of the portions of the municipality are not accessible in the wintertime. You know, people don't have their driveways plowed to their cottages, those types of things. So it just makes me wonder how and why we get to where we're using the type of equipment that we're using. And let's stop ordering stuff. Like, let's start looking at how we can do better. And I hope that we can look at that during the budget process. But I am sure that we can do better than everybody having a pickup truck and going to a smaller vehicle. Even in our house, we're going to an electric vehicle. Shocking, as we are car aficionados and things, but you know, we know that we need to do that. Our every day-to-day driving, we should be doing our best that we can do. So I would suggest that's the direction I would like to go with our township soon.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Harding.
Thank you very much. And first of all, to the CAO and all the CAOs across the district, thank you. To Councillor Roberts' perspective, let's start today. Our CAO has used a phrase numerous times to all of this council: crawl, walk, run. And if we know where we're going and the target is 2030, it's going to take some time to get there. And let's make sure we do it in a methodical, strategic, planned out fashion versus just, well, we started here and then we went over here. Let's use the limited resources. And I'll say that again, we have limited resources within our staff. If you think about all the projects that this council wants, and it needs to be done before the end. This is a roadmap right now for the next 9 years. And we're going to get staff and all CAOs to work together. There are things in here, funding opportunities for 2021. So staff are going to start working on that to get us moving in the right direction. So I appreciate the fact that this isn't like, okay, we're going to deal with this all in 2030. Our staff are going to, and all of the CAOs and all of the towns and townships across the district of Muskoka are working collectively to a district resolution as well that makes climate change at the forefront and sets an appropriate long-term target. You know, if we just bought 5 new pickup trucks, we're certainly not going to write them off tomorrow and walk away from an investment of $250,000. The next iteration may all be electric pickup trucks. Who knows how those are going to work? So I appreciate the resolution, and I look forward, the sooner we can sign this resolution and move it forward, the better off we can go. So I'm in support of where we are. And I know, again, staff are not sitting around waiting until 2030 to make this happen, because we have significant planning to get to that appropriate stage.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, this thing has taken a sort of a surprising turn for me. I did speak with the CAO a couple of days ago, and actually I'm quite pleased with where we've landed. We talk about education, we talk about communication. The funny thing is, there is a really big, obvious thing that we can do that, above all the other things we can do, will promote or will slow the pace of climate change more than anything else we're talking about, all the pickup trucks we drive, and that is getting people to stop cutting trees down. Trees are huge carbon sinks. 50% of the weight of any tree, 1/2 of the weight of a tree, tons, is actually stored carbon. And it stays stored as long as the tree is growing. And in fact, as long as it's growing, the amount of carbon it retains grows. It also stays stored as long as it's turned into 2x4s. If it's burned, it's released back into the atmosphere. So when we spent 3 or 4 or 5 hours talking about tree clearing, there is a huge climate change implication there that should be motivating us as much as anything to stop that process. Similarly, and I know it's not directly, well, it is partly directly in our control, the amount of salt. Well, the other thing about trees, don't forget, is they take up tons of water, literally tons of water. And as long as they're storing the water, it isn't washing over Councillor Zavitz's dock in Torrance, which is a great place for the water to be. And the other thing that I would point out, and I know the group Friends of Muskoka Watershed has been working with the district to look at the application of salt on the roads. Again, far greater impact on climate change than swapping out a pickup truck for an electric vehicle. So there's stuff we do every day. There's stuff that's ingrained as part of our life. There's stuff where we already have bylaws in place that can make a difference. And frankly, I think that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the stuff that, once we figure out how to manage it, is going to have the biggest payback for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So the sense I'm getting, and we have people all over the district obviously working on this and moving it forward. The sense I am getting is that we pass this resolution, and I'm not sure we need an actual report from CAO Hammond and Director Pink regarding what we're doing now. I think we can take that workload off their shoulders unless committee tells me differently. Mayor Harding?
No, I think we just need to pass this as soon as we can and get moving on this. And I just want to clarify, was Councillor Kelly suggesting that we should, potentially use less wood in construction and do building with secans more? I just want to make sure to keep the tree canopy going.
Oh, I love this group. It's so much fun. Okay, so I'm just going to get a coffee because I've got a lot of reading to do. I got to tell you. So
you don't have to, Bridgman, just so you know.
Pardon me?
I think you can chat with the clerk. We don't have to actually read the whole resolution, as we can say as published.
Can we do that, clerk? I need the confirmation. Oh. Would the consensus of committee be that I can say just as published? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Edwards? Oh, you mean yes. Okay, thank you. All right. Moved by Councillor Mazan and seconded by by Mayor Harding. It would be, do I have to say the specific, just as published on the climate change? Sorry, I have to make sure I'm on side here. Okay, as published on our climate change resolution. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That passes unanimously. Okay, so thank you very much, and we'll just leave it as that.
Do we need the mover and seconder on that?
I did say that, sorry, it was Councillor Mazan and Mayor Harding.
Okay.
But Councillor Hayes, I think then we went on to realize I didn't have to read it all, so. Okay, all right, that's great. Thank you, everyone. And the next item, which I'm going to ask direction from Councillor Roberts here, because I believe we may have already discussed a lot of this in our meetings today. So Councillor Roberts, this is strengthening bylaw enforcement in the township. I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you. We haven't discussed it. And the specific topic I want to talk to, which is I would like to have, and Councillor Kelly and myself talked about this about 6 weeks ago. We need to have a green light discussion on what can be done going forward to better achieve development compliance. So this is a really out of box thinking, and we can leave this till the next meeting. But it's more along the lines, just quite simply, that in accessory buildings, windows must be all at the top of the building. I mean, this is kind of thinking. How can we can we do this? And so, just looking for ideas that going forward as a group, we can have these ideas and explore them. So it's just it's a discussion point, but let's postpone this to the next meeting and hope it's not 10 hours long.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so I understand where you're coming from now, and I've got Mayor Harding and then Councillor Kelly, and I'm going to guess that everybody here would be happy to postpone it. It's actually a nice day out there today too. Mayor Harding.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree, we haven't had the full discussion, but I think one of the things that Director Pink is going to be coming back with next month are some statistics, which will help guide our discussion. So here's the building permits. Okay. Here's where the bylaw complaints, are they about beds in storage sheds, or are they more about blasting? And I think that will help frame our discussion as to where we need to either tighten bylaws, we need greater enforcement, or it's not really an issue at all. So just, I'm always a believer that just because one person has said something doesn't mean it's a problem across the entire municipality. And so I think Mr. Pink's report coming next month or September, whenever it is, will help frame that discussion where we need to go. I look forward to that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Largely what His Worship just said. I think we backed into this through our discussion yesterday and earlier today. And so waiting to hear what Mr. Pink comes up with is, I think, the right next step.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we'll just move this on to our agenda for next month. Okay, so the next is LPAT status update. Unless anybody has any questions they'd like to ask Mr. Pink, then I believe we're on to new business. Anyone have new business? Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. My buddy Councillor Cairns from Gravenhurst, we share lots of stuff, what's happening in Gravenhurst, forwarded me an interesting item that they have on their website, which is be a good neighbor. And it actually lays out, so, it starts out whether you lived here for years or you're renting or you're just here for the weekend. This is what we want you to consider. So I would suggest that we all look at Gravenhurst and see what they have on. It's actually really good. I would say it's nice and colorful, and it has all of those things that make you want to read through it. So I would suggest that, and also it's being shared on Facebook as well. So again, I think that we could look at even what other nearby municipalities are doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
To Councillor Nishikawa, thank you, through you, to Councillor Nishikawa's point, they even have radio advertising, and it would be interesting if perhaps our comms team could check in with Gravenhurst and find out what their program is. I do know I heard the radio advertising was such that if there's a bylaw infraction that you're aware of call this number. So it was quite amazing. I could not believe it. So maybe I was hearing it wrong or incorrectly, but I think we should look into it. It could be a good thing. Again, this is all part of this communicative piece. Maybe that's part of a larger strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else? Seeing no more new business, I am going to read our motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting adjourn at 12:02 p.m. and the next regular Planning Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, August 12th, 2021 at 9 a.m. electronically from the Council Chambers Municipal Office, Port Carney. All in favor? Great. Thank you, everybody, for your indulgence of a two-day meeting, basically. We hope the internet's stable going forward, and I hope you all have a really nice weekend with this beautiful weather. Bye.